What innocent question that someone asked you crushed you a little. Just happened recently actually. A few years ago I had a pretty awesome life. I was married. My husband and I were trying to have kids, and when I needed a car we just got me and Sav in anticipation for needing it for kids. He had 2 and we planned to have 2-3. Well, things didn't work out and he ended up dying from drinking himself to death in January, and between that and 2 miscarriages, an ectopic and an IVF cycle that failed, I'm slowly coming to the realization that I'll never be a mother. It's painful to say the least. The kid I nanny for was sitting in my car and we were discussing his day when he says, "Nanny, why do you have such a big car when it's on you?" I wanted to cry right there on the spot. It just really stung. But instead I told him it was because I knew I would be watching him and I needed a car big enough for him, which seemed to placate him, and he then started discussing Batman with me. Table for how many? The first time we went out for dinner after my dad completed suicide. That one hit like a truck. I grew up lower middle class and my parents had been severely injured by a drunk driver at the end of my 8th grade year and were disabled and no longer able to work. We basically had no money for school clothes, but my mother tried to get me a few cool shirts. I wasn't a popular kid and most people didn't really know much about me. In my freshman year of high school, one of the popular girls in my class asked, "Don't you have more than 3 shirts? I only ever see you in the same 3 shirts." High school in the 80s in the United States sucked. My mom accidentally called me after about 10 years of not talking. I answered all ready for a serious conversation. When I answered, she was like, "Wait, who's this?" I say, "Hey mom, it's Fraggle Rocks." Her reply is, "What hurt? Fraggle Rocks who? Why are you calling me mom?" She was so drunk high she didn't recognize her own daughter's name. Ducky. I went to get a haircut for my fiance's funeral. It was Friday. He had died on Tuesday. My stylist, all bubbly, said, "It's been a while. The last time I saw you, you were just about to move in with your boyfriend. How's it going?" The word stuck and I kind of rasped it out. Honestly though, her reaction was so wonderful. She was behind me and just put her hands firmly on my shoulders and looked me in the eyes in the mirror. No shock. No stupid platitudes. Just silent, genuine empathy. The rest of the haircut was pretty quiet, but she did everything so, like, lovingly, and didn't make a big deal out of it when I cried a little. I teach 1st grade and was talking about how I've been married for 5 years. One student asked, "How could you not have a baby by now?" Not wanting to explain multiple miscarriages and IVF to a classroom of 6-year-olds, I said, "Being around all of you makes my heart so full that I don't think I have room in my heart for a baby." They all smiled. I smiled too. I've learned from my experience to never ask couples when if they want to have a family. Ducking hurts. My son undergoing chemo and radiation treatment for a bone marrow transplant. People, meaning well of course, would always ask, "How's your son doing?" I'd always have to fake a smile and give some shallow hopeful answer, "He's fine." He's a fighter, but deep inside the question crushed me every time. No. He was suffering. Teetered on the brink of life and death. He was not fine, and every time I heard that question I was reminded of it and had to swallow the pain. My son has since recovered, but it was a very tough time. A friend looked at me and said, "I know we've talked about it before, but how did you break your nose?" "I've never broken my nose, this is just how it looks." Wow, Owen Wilson. When will you get better so you can play with us? My niece, who was too young to understand what disabled meant. She's older now and understands I will never get better. And we have adapted playtime to do things I can handle as well. But that broke my heart. A waiter asked me if my wife was pregnant once. She was just bloated from chemo side effects. Crushed me. So glad she didn't hear. She couldn't have had kids and she passed 2 years back. Edit. I just wanted to say thanks to those who commented on this. It wasn't expected. We went to the place a lot, so as a young couple he had seen over the years, it was probably a reasonable thing to assume. Also, I'm doing okay. We knew she was terminal for most of our relationship. We probably did more in those few short years than we would have normally. It hurts a lot still, but I know I have her everything I possibly could in that time. Just remember to live life like each day could be your last, people. Mend that broken friendship. Ask out that girl. Follow your dream. What's on her face? Mom? Little girl. I used to be a cashier and had terrible acne at the time. Rough night last night? Usually asked with a big smile. I was asked that all the time when I was younger because I had a really obvious tremor. Thing is, I did not drink or do drugs at all and I had no idea what was wrong with me. I was eventually diagnosed with Graves' disease and treated for it. But I still have a bit of a tremor. I could never imagine getting cancer at such a young age. How are you this strong, brave? Do you stay so positive? I've stopped counting the amount of people, especially working at the hospital. I'd expect a bit more sensitivity from them, that have asked me that. Yes, I'm mid-20s. But it's not a choice that I'm staying strong. It's ducking survival. Every time someone asks me that, it feels like getting punched. I got asked why I won't stand up straight for a photo. I have kyphosis and am standing up as straight as I can. Non-verbal. But the nurse at the flu shot station seemed unsure whether to give me the under 65 or over 65 consent form. If I'm going to be mistaken for being that much older than my actual age, at least it should be in the context of me getting a senior discount. My grandma's hair has been stark white since she was 23. And she has been getting offered senior discounts since she was about 30. She used to get offended, but now sees it as a sorta life hack. She still hasn't hit 65. Why don't you ever go out? Well, because I don't have anyone to go out with. Specialist appointment and they did the normal thing of checking contact details. They asked if the contact number and details for my wife were still correct. I started crying. My wife passed away this time 12 months ago. I had no friends in summer school and a girl asked me if I had any friends. Like straight up. Do you have any friends? Then became friends with me, but still. I worked in retail when I was younger and people would always be like, oh, do you have any ideas for Father's Day? What did you get your dad? Full stop. My dad committed suicide when I was 16. They had no way of knowing that, but damn if it didn't hurt. So when are you going back for your master's degree? I was so proud of getting my bachelor's and had no intention of going back because how rough school was for me. Back in 6th grade we were watching a film in my science class. Of course. My table took this opportunity to just chat. Don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but my friend finds out I didn't know the word vagina, knew the body part, just not the term. I didn't get to explain that to the table because his immediate response was, "Didn't your dad ever have that talk with you?" I spent the rest of the period with my head down crying. My friend kind of freaked out. He demanded that no one at the table say anything sex related because he thought that maybe I was crying cause I wasn't mature enough to talk about that stuff yet. I told him later that night on RuneScape that my dad had been arrested about a year or two ago and that was the reason for my reaction. I'm 25 now and deaf over it. Lol. But at the time that question destroyed me. It was good though, he was the first person I'd talked about it with and it brought us closer at the time. If my girlfriend at the time was my daughter. We're only 2 years different in age but I look old AF. I was only 22 lol. My recently divorced ex and I worked at the same place. Divorce was not my idea but he'd found someone new and I was heartbroken. He ended up quitting at her insistence. 6 months after the divorce was final. A coworker asked how ex-husband was doing. Hadn't seen him since he quit, yada yada. Behind my back another coworker was trying to wave first coworker off. Spent the rest of the shift crying on and off. Apparently co-worker number 1 was oblivious and didn't know we'd divorced. Just thought ex had quit. Edit. Not a question, but my 8-year-old niece once remarked, "You don't laugh anymore." Edit. This was over a year ago when I was having a rough time, but I'm doing much better now. Thank you all for your support and for sharing your stories. I wish you all the best. Why do you work in a factory when you have an honors degree in physics? How are you handling everything? My notary public, who also happens to be my boss's boss while notarizing my divorce paperwork. Completing a divorce packet with no help from an attorney can be a real pain in the ass. But at least it kept me focused on the bureaucratic bullshit nonsense part of it rather than the fact that my 9-year marriage was ending. Turned out that as soon as someone asked me sincerely how I was doing, the answer was not at all well. I went back to my desk and had a panic attack. She gets half of that panic attack. You know? Why don't you live with your parents? I live with my grandparents because I didn't want to live with my abusive stepmoms on both sides of the family. They all live down in Texas while I'm in Colorado. Still hurts a little when people ask, though. When are you going to finish your thesis? Mom asked me. Who are you? When I visited her recently. She has dementia. What do you see when you look in the mirror each morning? My friend was having some body issues and she asked me this question since I was one of the most confident people she knew. She learned maybe a bit too much that day. You're so great. Why are you still single? How's your brother doing? Haven't seen him in a little while. He passed away 2 years ago. That wasn't very fun. Edit. I appreciate everybody reaching out to me. It means a lot. Edit 2. I'll add to my story further by saying a close second place would be, why wasn't your dad at your brother's funeral? Life sucks sometimes. Someone once asked me, don't you want to be a mom? Yes. I do. But as I'm single, over 40 and not rich, that's probably not going to happen, and it devastated me. I had to say yes. I'd love that. And then excuse myself to go home and cry. Are you okay? You seems a little off. I've been diagnosed with chronic depression and paranoia disorders for years, and I thought I was doing a decent job hiding it from all my friends, but apparently it wasn't good enough, I guess. Edit. Thank you all for the massive amounts of support you guys have shown me, truly it means the world to me. Someone jokingly asked me if I was high because my eyes were red. I had just been diagnosed with an eye disease and told I would go blind before 50. My eyes were red from my medicated eye drops and partially from crying. I was only 16 and having a hard time coming to terms with it. Why are you so weird? I never really fit in. My 5-year-old cousin asked me where grandpa was when we were getting ready to head to his funeral. Everyone went silent and we just kind of stared at each other until my dad managed to distract her. It was brutal. Edit. Based off of some of the comments here, I feel like I should elaborate on this. This was the first family death I've experienced, so I barely knew what to say to older children. Much less a 5-year-old. We didn't want to tell her anything because we didn't know what her parents told her, so we felt like it was best to change the subject. That being said, watching children react to seeing the body at a funeral is probably one of the worst feelings I've ever experienced. When will we dig up dad? Asked by my almost 5-year son. He's never met him as dad died 3 months before birth. This goes along the question, when will dad stop being dead? Full stop. Co-worker innocently asked, who does the cooking at your house? Full stop. I had very recently separated from my wife and was living alone. When are you due? I wasn't pregnant. Have since lost over 60 pounds though. Is she your girlfriend? Why don't you have any kids? Sometimes it really bothers me when people ask me this. Because I can't have kids. Because I don't want kids. Because I want to wait to have kids. It's such a loaded question. Speaking to my coach the other day, she asked me, "How are you feeling?" And I honestly did my best not to cry my eyes out. I just got out of school and have to figure out what I wanna study next year while balancing 3 jobs that barely gives me enough for rent. So, I feel bad, to be honest. Why don't you ever talk? Are you unsociable? By a classmate when I was in high school. As someone with severe social phobia who was struggling to hide it at all costs and to be normal at the time, I died a little inside. One time a girl I had a crush on asked me, "Oh wait, aren't you gay?" Also a runner-up. How are things going with XGF? I dropped out of university a few months back because I wasn't happy. I've since moved home, and sometimes at work, people I haven't seen in a while will approach me and ask how school is going. It was my decision to leave university, but when people ask it about, I can't help but feel judged when I say I've dropped out. I was a freshman in high school in 1992-93. My high school science teacher asked me if I was ever jealous of my older brother. He was a senior. I was kind of confused. She said, "You know, since he is so smart, popular, and just has everything going for him." First time I had ever, in my entire life, considered that people viewed my brother as better than me. It has honestly kind of stuck with me. That was 26 or 27 years ago. One day I said to my mom I was going out with friends, and she asked, "You have friends?" It was a joke, but damn. When me and my dad and my sister were driving to another town to get away from my mom so we could eat without getting yelled at stuff thrown at us, my sister asked why mommy was so mean. And my dad had to simplify to her level that her mom was an alcoholic. She was 6. Edit. Why is my son's name still rear facing in his car seat? I never used a car seat and I'm just fine, father-in-law. I was in a bad car accident when I was little and both of my sisters were killed in it. Both of my sisters would have lived had they been in car seats. Went to the doctors for a regular checkup and they asked me if I went out with my friends, and I simply replied most are married and in other cities and the rest are working in other cities. I am currently looking for a job, so when they come to visit we go out and catch up. To which she replied, "So, no friends?" That definitely hurt. I always wanted to study psychology in college, but my overbearing mother wouldn't have that, so I studied chemistry. In my last semester I took an abnormal psychology class just for fun and I crushed it, ending with a 99% average. After the final, my professor took me outside the classroom and said, "Why didn't you major in psychology? You would have made a great psychologist." That really crushed my soul. Who died? It was a common question my friends and I asked each other when we were sitting there looking mopey. Usually we were just staring off and nothing was wrong. On this day I'd lost one of my soldiers when I was in the army to suicide. It was only a year after we came home from overseas. I looked at him and broke right down. I have a tattoo on my chest that's a song title of my favorite band. I had the tattoo artist do it in the font style of their logo. It's in a runic looking style font and says "My Own Savior." The S in Savior is kinda center of my chest. After about 3 years of having this tattoo now, someone at my new job last week cornered me asking what kind of S that is. Pretty much insinuating that it was some Nazi bolt S or something. I had to pull up a picture of the band logo to show it wasn't, but duck, it still bothers me. I'm constantly hoping now that no one thinks I'm a Nazi asshole with this tattoo. My loving girlfriend, I know, backdoor brag, and I were watching a show that opens with a stoner dude playing video games. When his hardworking girlfriend pull up outside, he scrambles to pretend like he wasn't being a lazy slob. My girlfriend offhanded says, "Oh, man, just like us." About a year ago I had been out of work for 6 months while she had a steady job. For the record, I didn't get stoned and play video games. I was constantly applying for jobs and dealing with emotional fallout of having a dozen job interviews that fell through for various reasons. It was just an innocent comment about the girlfriend getting home. But like, damn. So what are you doing after you finish college? I sprained my ankle pretty badly before my 13th birthday. And my dad wouldn't take me to the hospital to get a boot or crutches. So I was basically hopping around my house on my good ankle for my birthday. Seeing as how I couldn't really get outside or do anything, I spent the day playing video games. My dad said to me, "Seems like you've had a pretty nice birthday. Despite the ankle. It's not like you would have done anything different anyways. Right?" Made me feel like my dad didn't think I had friends or interests beyond video games. How do I ask out? Guy name that isn't me. Were you trying for a girl? I bet you wanted a girl. Will you try again? After my third and final child was born. 3 boys. Husband is from a big family of all sons. Yes, bitch. Coming to this thread was a mistake. When I was little I had motor tics, like Tourette's, and I was in the school canteen when a little kid asked me, "Why do you do that?" Duck. It hurt. Who do you want to list as your emergency contact? At the dentist's office a few weeks after my mom died and 4 years after my dad died, I felt like bursting into tears because, at 22 years old, I really didn't know. Did you get a job yet? Me. Talking about my daughter and proudly showing pics to a coworker. She's so cute. I bet your mom just loves her and being her grandmother, doesn't she? Little girls are the best. Me. Oh yes. Yes, she did. I lost my mom 5 years ago to a heroin overdose. The most traumatic thing I've ever experienced. Questions about her. Especially when it comes to my daughter. My mom only knew baby girl for 3 weeks before she passed. One of my best friends lost her daughter to SIDS. I'm not sure what was worse. Her screaming when the doctor told her or her 2-year-old son at the wake. I managed to keep it together at the hospital. The entirety of my 3-mile walk home I was crying my eyes out like a little girl. From Lincoln Park Top River North on a beautiful Chicago Saturday in the summer. Got a lot of weird looks. But couldn't care less at the time. At the wake I volunteered to watch her son and we were watching SpongeBob in a back room. He asked me, "Uncle Steve, where is my sister? My daddy said she would be here." I'm not sure. I haven't seen her. We will ask your daddy later, okay? Why are you so thin? I'm very sensitive person and that hurts me a lot. I always wore jacket every time at school for the last 2 years, even during pay, cause I don't want people see me on my very thin body. I'm 6 feet height with 55 kilograms. I was wearing a Thanos costume and a 5-year-old boy came up to me and asked, "Why did you kill Iron Man?" His mother's face went white and my sister burst out laughing. All I could say back was that I didn't mean to. But sometimes that just happens during a fight. Fighting is dangerous. I couldn't bring myself to explain Tony Stark's suicide to the kid.